Yeah. One moment. Yeah. Um, Google Classroom is my platform for you guys to do assignments and things like that. And the AWS Academy is AWS's. That's what AWS provides for you guys. Two different things, because the Canvas, AWS's Academy platform, um, what it has is labs, modules. It has videos. It has knowledge checks, right? Mine is, readings, assignments, video assignments, um, quizzes, and also your exams are gonna come through Google Classroom. That's gonna be started on September 27th. Okay, so both every platform that I use here is important. Okay?
Teacher, there's a way that we can print as a PDF the modules.
I don't think that you can do that with Neopad.
Okay.
I don't think you
Yeah,
can.
because sometimes I like to take notes while you are explaining.
Yeah, you can take notes and then send the notes to yourself, your email, and then the notes are gonna be with the slide where you took the notes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's begin. So security is the highest priority at Amazon Web Services. It's very important. They take security very, very seriously. Okay. Okay. Right. So AWS delivers a scalable cloud computing environment that is designed for high availability and dependability, while providing the tools that enable you to run a wide range of applications. Helping to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your systems and data is critical to AWS, and so is maintaining customer trust and confidence. So, this module provides an introduction to the AWS approach to security, which includes both the controls in the AWS environment and some of the AWS products and features customers can use to meet their security objectives. Okay, perfect. So, the topics of this module is the AWS Share Responsibility Model, very important for the exam, super important. AWS Identity and Access Management, IAM, securing a new AWS account, securing accounts, securing data on AWS, working to ensure compliance. Okay, activities that we have here. Activities is the AWS Share Responsibility Model activity and recorded demonstration of IAM. Okay? And the lab is going to be the first lab you guys going to have. Module 4 is AWS IAM. Okay. Now, after completing this module, you should be able to recognize the share responsibility model, identify the responsibility of the customer and AWS, recognize IAM users, groups, and roles, and describe different types of security credentials in IAM. Also, identify the steps to securing a new AWS account, explore IAM users and groups, recognize how to secure AWS data, and recognize AWS compliance programs. Okay. So let's talk about the section 1, which is the AWS Shared Responsibility Model. Okay. Now here we have this chart, right? This is the model that you guys have to understand very well, okay? Because in the exam, they're going to ask you questions and they're going to give you a scenario, and then you have to determine whose responsibility it is, okay? Guys, the customer is responsible for the security in the cloud. This preposition here is super important. Everything that has to do with in the cloud is the customer's responsibility. And what it has to do with the security of the cloud is AWS's responsibility. Okay? So everything that has to do with compute, storage, database, and networking, all of the software, and also the hardware in the regions, availability zones, and edge locations, that is AWS's responsibility. Okay? When they say that the maintenance, they talk about the maintenance, repairs, and things that had to happen in the data centers. That's AWS's responsibility, because when you are in the cloud, basically you move most servers to the cloud, so you don't have to worry about any appliances or any data centers or any servers, because everything is in the cloud, right? Now, data is the customer's responsibility. AWS doesn't know what data you store in the cloud. They don't care, they don't know, they don't want to know. That's your responsibility. Now, how you secure the data, it's your responsibility too, right? It's not AWS's. AWS will give you all the resources, all the services that you need to protect your data. That's your responsibility. Okay? So the application, the identity and access management, IAM is a fully managed service, because everything is done in the background, but it's your responsibility to create users, IAM users, give them the right credentials, give them the right access, create groups. That's your responsibility too. Create roles, create policies. That is all your responsibility. Securing your data with firewall configuration, operating system, network, all of that is your responsibility. You're the one that have to put a firewall on an EC2, and the firewall is the security group. You're the one that's responsibility. Client-side data, encryption and data integrity authentication, you have to do that. Everything that has to do with data, guys, is your responsibility. That's it. Simple. It's not AWS's. Okay? Now, making sure that your data is, encrypted on the server side, is your responsibility as well. You have to enforce that as an organization. You have to enforce it. Okay? Networking traffic, protection, encryption, and integrity and identity. So guys, when you have some time today after class, maybe tomorrow, I don't know, Monday, before next Saturday, when we cover the next two bullet points, 6 and 7, right? Very important that you guys take a look at this image here, if you want to call it an image, this model, and try to understand this much better. Take your time, because this is super important. They're not going to ask you. They're not going to fill out the blanks. No, they're going to give you a scenario, and then you have to determine whose responsibility it is. So that's very important. We're going to see that in the exams that we're going to take in class and outside of class. Okay? So that you will understand this much better. Okay? Don't forget, the customer is security in the cloud, and AWS is security of the cloud. Okay? So let's see this as an umbrella. Okay? AWS is the umbrella, right? Or there's an umbrella in between, right? And then whatever is inside the umbrella is your responsibility. And whatever is outside the umbrella to make the umbrella work is AWS's responsibility. So let's see it that way so you guys can understand it. Okay. Let's see also as the planet Earth, right? The planet Earth. Everything inside the planet Earth is the customer's responsibility, and outside the planet Earth in the outer space, that is the AWS's responsibility. That is making sure that the Earth, spins properly and works properly for the humans inside the Earth, to live and to be secure and safe and all that. So something like that. Okay. So AWS operates, manages, and controls the components from the software virtualization layer down to the physical security of the facilities where AWS services operate. AWS is responsible for protecting the infrastructure that runs all the services that are offered, protecting the infrastructure that runs all the services that are offered in the AWS cloud. This infrastructure is composed of the hardware, software, networking, and facilities that run AWS cloud services. Okay. So everything that has to do with the infrastructure, that's AWS's responsibility. All right. That's why it's good to understand these prepositions here, in and off. Okay. Now, AWS responsibility. Okay. Compute, storage, database, networking. All right. So this is the infrastructure, the global infrastructure, where you have regions and availability zones. Okay. And edge locations. Right. Those are the components, the main components of the global infrastructure. Okay. Now, AWS control all the physical access to the data centers. Okay. They are the ones that hire the security guards, the access like key card or car keys, and batches and codes, and I don't know, face recognition, whatever they're using to control the access to the on premises. That's their responsibility. Okay. And of course, every access, every single granted access to the physical data centers is based on need, and the need is what the job requires. Okay. If you're not allowed to enter a specific area, then you cannot enter it. There's no need for you to enter that area. So everything is well controlled, because ultimately they are safeguarding your data as a customer, because your data resides in a data center. Okay. Even if it is in the cloud and everything is stored in the cloud, right? Like you would store an image in an S3 bucket, that image is actually stored in a data center in AWS. Okay. So they have to protect those physical servers, the physical equipment that resides in a data center. Okay. So that's their responsibility. That's not mine. I don't care about that. That's their responsibility. Okay. Hardware is their responsibility too, right? Those are the ones, they are the people that decommission the servers when they're not any longer in use, or they're just age and they need to be replaced. So they'll be the ones decommissioning those servers or storage or access logging, and all of that have to do with AWS. AWS would be audited too by other institutions, organizations that they need to make sure that AWS is compliance, right? In compliance with the regulations and rules that have been established. Okay, so that's AWS's responsibility. AWS is make sure that the network, right? The network doesn't have any intrusion, anything abnormal, right? If it is in the cloud, guys, if it is in the cloud, it's your responsibility, as we saw here in the model. Okay, it says here networking. That's your responsibility, right? But outside, working with all the elements that, guarantee that the network will be properly working and, intact, then AWS makes sure that that happens. That's their responsibility, right? And also making sure that all the infrastructure is virtualized. That's AWS's responsibility too. Okay. So all of this is their responsibility. Okay. Like we said, it's just the security of the cloud. Okay. That's their responsibility. Now, that responsibility in the cloud, that's our responsibility as customers. So we have to comply with our own regulations. You have a company, you have standards, you have rules, you have um, things that keep control and keep things at bay. That's very important. You have policies and things like that. So customer responsibility, you are responsible for choosing the operating system of your EC2 instances. Okay? AWS would not choose the operating system for you. You choose the operating system, and you're the one that has to patch it and maintain it. Okay? That's your responsibility, right? If you take a look at infrastructure as a service, that will be EC2s, you have a lot of control. And the more control you have, the more responsible you will become. Okay? Or the more accountable you will be held because you are controlling that. So if you're controlling it, it's no one else's fault if something happens. It's no one else's responsibility. It's your responsibility because you're the one that controls it, right? That's what happens with EC2 instances. Applications, guys, you create your application, and then you're the one that has to, control the access to it. You have to create the passwords. You have to do role-based access. The access would be just limited based on the role. If the person is an administrator, then the person can have full access to the application. If the person is just a developer, then the person will have access to the developer side of that application. That's it. No more than that, right? So that is your responsibility as well. The security group configuration, you're the one that has to make sure that the security group is, in place. Just give me a moment, guys. One moment, I needed to get my phone for the authenticator. It's going to ask me for my code, MFA code. Okay. Just give me 1 second. Let me bring this here. Okay. So, can you guys see it? Is it my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, when you create an EC2 instance, don't forget that you can find EC2 instance by coming here to the service section and just click on EC2 is on their compute, or you can make it a favorite just like I did here, and it will show here. Also, when you open it, recently opened, it's going to show here too. So 3 different ways to find it, right? And also when you log in, the first page that you get here, you can just type EC2 here as well, or it will be shown here as a recently visited service. Okay, So I'm gonna click on that, and then we're gonna have here that the security groups is your responsibility. You're the one that has to create these guys. There's some by default that AWS creates, but they come with no port open. So by default, they are implicitly denied. All of the traffic is implicitly denied. Okay. Um, He's saying here that the security group is this default. Um, you have to open the ports. Why? Because I mean, no one can access my application through the internet or probably SSH to log in into the instance through the CLI. So no one can, because the ports are not open. There's no port open. And port is what guarantees access to my instances, right? So you're the one that has to, make sure that the correct ports are open, right? You're not going to open a port that, I mean, it is not allowed by your organization or something. And also, when you open a port, you have to limit the access to your applications. Only let the people that are authorized to access your instance access it. Okay, so you have to, configure. What? One moment. You have to configure the security groups right here. The security group configuration is your responsibility. OS or host-based firewalls, the firewalls including intrusion detection or prevention systems. This is for the operating system. That's your responsibility. Remember, for AWS, the intrusion detection is for the network infrastructure. For you, is for the operating system. Guys, you have control of the operating system of your machines. Okay? So you can choose the operating system. If you take a look at AWS here, when I create an instance, let me come here. When I create an instance, okay, launch an instance, the first thing that you have to do is select an AMI. AMI is an Amazon machine image. The Amazon machine image contains the operating system. And you can see here, Amazon Linux. You can choose here only the free tier, right? And then you can have Amazon Linux, Red Hat, SUSE Linux, Ubuntu here again, Windows. Okay? Or you can simply launch a database in your server. Okay? But these are the guys that are included in the free tier. You have 750 hours per month. That's how many hours you have. And this guy contains the software. It contains the operating system. It's a template. It contains the install packages. It contains the dependencies. It contains everything that you need to launch this instance. Okay? So you have control on that. You select the operating system. It's like when you buy a computer and you want to install Windows 10, you can go ahead and install it. It's your computer. So you have control of that. Okay? But don't blame it on anyone else when something happens. It's your responsibility. You were the one that installed the operating system. Okay? So AWS gives you leeway so you can do it, right? And it puts the responsibility on you. Right? It's your responsibility. Right? And guys, sorry about this. My mouse is very sensitive. Sometimes it just jumps to the next slide or just comes back to the previous one. It happens. Okay. So network configuration, whenever you create a VPC, for example, a VPC, VPC you can come down here and look under networking and content delivery, which we're gonna see today. We can create a VPC the way you want. By default, there's one VPC that is created for you. Is this one the default one? I'm gonna delete these three, right? and we have to do one by one. Okay. So I can delete this VPC and to do delete here. Okay. And then it would delete that VPC. Then I would delete the other one. VPC is free, guys, but I don't want to have this now. I will have time to create more later. Okay. You don't get charged for VPCs. It's free. Okay. All right. Good. So I only have the default one that is created for me, right? When I create the account, and it's also for you guys. And you also get six subnets by default, because Northern Virginia, I don't know what region you're in right now, but I am in US East 1, and that happens to be the region that has the most availability zone, 6. The other ones have 3. Okay, most of them have 3, and this one has 6 because it's the oldest region of all. Okay, so those are created for me. This is all free. So the account management, logging, and permission settings for each user. When you create a user, and remember that the first day of class we created a user, an IAM user. We configure the CLI. All of this is, you have to make sure that the server-side encryption, the file system or data, it's also there, right? One of the ways to ensure that this data is encrypted server-side is by going to the S3 bucket section, create a bucket, right? And when you create a bucket, make sure that the bucket has server-side encryption. So whenever someone uploads an asset or an object into the bucket, it will be encrypted by default. Okay, even if the file's not encrypted before, it will be encrypted as soon as it lands in the bucket. So you can enforce that, right? As well. That's the customer's responsibility. Everything that is configurable by the customer is the customer responsibility. All right. So do you guys understand the difference between the responsibility of AWS's and the responsibility of the customer? You guys understand?
Yes.
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 Yes. So don't forget that, AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud, and the customer is responsible for the security in the cloud. That's very important. Okay. Now, service characteristics and security responsibility. Okay, these are example of services that are managed by the customer. EC2, and we know that already, is infrastructure as a service. And we saw in the first classes the 3 different models, service models. We saw infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. Well, we saw that when you have infrastructure as a service, you have a lot of control. It's more flexible because you can configure a lot of things, including networking and storage. Okay. Also, the customer is responsible for managing more aspects of the security. Remember, the more control you have, the more accountable you're going to be held, because you have more responsibilities, right? And you can configure the access to this, to that infrastructure as a service. So in that case, we have EVS, right? We have EVS. Guys, for EVS, you have to just come here where it says volumes, right? You go to the EC2 dashboard, and then in the dashboard, you can come down here and look for volumes. This is an EVS volume. It's an elastic block store volume, okay? You can create a volume here, and then in the volume, you can choose the volume type. We're gonna talk about this later, the volume types. general purpose, provision IOPS, in this case, version 2, and throughput optimized, HDD, and cold HDD, or magnetic. So you can choose that. You can choose the availability zone where that volume is going to be, right? You can make sure that it's encrypted, right? And you will have to choose the key for that. I would choose the one that is the encrypted one by default, the key by default by AWS. So that's going to be encrypted. And it's using KMS, Key Management Service by AWS. And this is the key ID. Okay. So now we can simply create that particular, I can create it with 100 gigabyte. And then for every 100, you have to multiply by 3 to get the IOPS here. Okay, so I get 1,000 here, and then I get 3,000. That's the maximum you can go. I'm gonna have by the way, IOPS is input output per second. Okay, I can have 100, and there's gonna be 300 multiplied by 3. You see, and then I can create a volume, and then I have my volume. As simple as that. So that's it's not going to show here because it takes a few seconds to show. Now it shows. It's available. I can go ahead and attach this to an EC2 instance. Okay. So an EVS volume is like a thumb drive in the cloud that you can plug it into a computer and unplug it. This is the same thing. When you attach it to a virtual machine, we just plugging that into the virtual machine, right? And then the virtual machine is going to use that as block storage. Okay. Now, something very important. Do you see the availability zone here? The volume has to be, created in the same availability zone as the virtual machine. Otherwise, it will not recognize it. It will not show. Okay. When I just right click here and attach the volume and I just do this, there's nothing there because I don't have any instance. But the instance that you want to attach the volume to has to be created in the US East 1A, which is an availability zone in the Northern Virginia region. Okay, so they have to be in this because an EVS volume is a regional service, and it has to be in the same region and in the same availability zone. More later when I give you a demonstration on EVS. Okay, let me just delete this guy, right? Because I'm not gonna use it. Okay, and I'll be charged for that if I don't use it. Even when it said it's not attached to anything, I'm not using it, I'm gonna be charged for that. So I don't want to be charged for that. Okay, gone. Okay. VPC, it's a segment of the AWS cloud. It's a virtual network, right? You have configuration there too. You create some nets. You create NACLs, which is the network access list, control list. You have to limit the access to your resources, and you have VPC logs where you can log who accessed the VPC, right? So all of this is managed by you guys as a customer. Now, you have here example services managed by AWS. Lambda, Lambda is a fully managed service. It's a function in AWS that you can run in different languages. One of them is Python, Java, Node.js, .NET, Ruby. So all those languages, programming languages, you can write AWS Lambda. It's a serverless, EC2 is server. AWS Lambda is serverless compute service, okay? It's fully managed by AWS. You don't have to do anything about it. The only thing that you have to do is just probably do some little configuration like adding a role or probably selecting how much RAM you're gonna use and probably encrypting a few parameters, probably environment variables that you can encrypt. But the underlying infrastructure everything that is behind the scenes is being taken care of by AWS, right? It's a fully managed. It's platform as a service, right? Infrastructure as a service, you have more control. Platform as a service, you have less control, right? Then also you have Amazon Relational Database Service, Amazon RDS. That one you don't have much control over it because it's a fully managed service. So it's managed by AWS as well. Okay. Elastic Beanstalk, that guy, you just upload the code and it will build it, deploy it for you. So it's a great service and you don't have to do much about it. Okay. That is AWS's responsibility. The only thing they're responsible for is just creating the application, right? You create the data and just upload it in Elastic Beanstalk, and it will do that for you. The same with Lambda. You create your function, upload it, or write it in the section of the code, and then Lambda will run it for you, right? So customers do not need to manage the online infrastructure. AWS handles the operating system, database patching, firewall configuration, and disaster recovery. And customer can focus on managing code or data. This is something that is very beneficial because I don't have to worry about anything else. I don't choose the operating system. I don't choose anything that is on the line. I don't have to worry about updating, upgrading, patching, maintaining anything. I just focus on creating my code and then upload it. That's it. Okay. As simple as that. These are some of the examples of SaaS, software as a service: AWS Trusted Advisor, AWS Shield, and Amazon Chime. Amazon Chime, guys, is the one that AWS is using for communication between the employees in Amazon. It's like similar to probably Slack and probably similar to Zoom or something like that, but it's the AWS's proprietary tool or service. All right. AWS Trusted Advisor is going to be the expert in the cloud. Okay. That's the one that gives you recommendations. I'm just telling you this word slowly. Recommendations. What is the meaning of that? That's going to be the service that gives you recommendations, and that's the key word that's going to show in the exam. Okay. AWS Trusted Advisor, recommendations, right? That's the key word for that service. AWS Shield is a service that was created to react or respond or to intercept DDoS attacks, like distributed denial of service attacks. Okay. It has two flavors. It has standard and advanced. Standard is free and advanced you have to pay for it. And then Amazon Chimes, which is the AWS's or Amazon's service. Software is centrally hosted, right? Centrally hosted, licensed on a subscription model and a pays-as-you-go basis.
Hello?
Services are typically accessed via web browser, mobile app, or application programming interface, and customers do not need to manage the infrastructure that supports the service. You have an infrastructure of a service, you have control, more control. Platform as service, you have less control. You start losing control. And then when you get to this guy, you have little control or no control at all. Okay. Another example of software as service could be Dropbox, Google Drive, Office 365. Those are software as a service. And you have no control whatsoever. The only thing that you can do is do some configuration like creating folders, moving one file from one place to the other. And I don't know, those are the create your password, your username. I mean, superficial, but you have no control of the underlying infrastructure at all. You don't modify the code, you don't modify the software, you cannot do any of that. Okay. Okay. So there are two scenarios there. Okay. And for each scenario, you will be asked several questions about whose responsibility it is, AWS or the customer, to ensure security of the item in question. Let's do it. Okay. So, first question. Okay. First scenario. Consider this deployment. Who is responsible? AWS or the customer? So, number one, upgrades and patches to the operating system on the EC2 instance. Who is responsible?
Customer.
Customer for sure, right? Remember that, you know, EC2 instance is infrastructure as a code, so you have responsibility there. Okay, you're the one that patches, upgrades, and maintains the operating system. Very good. So the answer for that is the customer. Okay, good. Physical security of the data center.
AWS.
Does everybody agree?
Yeah.
AWS. Very good. Virtualization infrastructure.
AWS.
Customer.
Do you virtualize things? Are you sure?
No, sorry. AWS.
Okay, good.
What do you mean by virtualizing it?
I'm sorry?
What do you mean by virtualizing?
Make things virtual.
Virtual.
Okay. It's what we have right now, virtual, right? Zoom is virtual. We're not in a physical classroom. We are in the cloud, right? So EC2 security group settings. Who sets the security?
Customer.
Customer.
That's for sure, right? Very good. Configuration of the applications that run on the EC2 instance.
Customer.
Yeah. I would say that most things that are done with EC2 instances are done by the customer, right? Because it's infrastructure as a code. You have a lot of control, but you don't have the total control. Remember that AWS is the owner of the service, okay? But you have a lot of control with that guy. Oh, Oracle upgrades and or patches if the Oracle instance runs as an Amazon RDS instance.
Customer?
AWS.
AWS.
Platform.
Remember that
PIS.
it says here as an RDS instance. This is a fully managed service.
Yeah.
Okay, so responsibility is in AWS. Okay, now the other one is similar, but instead of saying RDS, it says EC2. So
Customer. It's customer.
So you're running the same database, right? But one is in RDS, and the other one is
In ES. Yes.
right. One moment. Let me see if I can do something here. What? No. S3 buckets access configuration.
Customer.
The customer. Good. I'm trying to move this to. Just give me 1 second. I'll try to move my. All right. Good. Okay. The one that we were doing here was the. Okay. So you can come here to RDS, right? RDS, you can see on the databases, RDS. This is a relational database service, okay? And in RDS, you can choose, when you create a database, you can choose the engine that you're using, right? MySQL, MariaDB, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, and Postgres. If I choose an Oracle, this is a fully managed service. I don't have to install anything. I don't have to update anything. I don't have to patch, maintain anything. This is all done by AWS, right? But if I create a database, on an EC2 instance, which is a little different, right? Then you have more control. Then you manage the installation of that. You have to install it just like you do in any computer, right? Like I did here. This is the AWS MySQL Workbench, right? I had to install this in my computer. You will have to do the same in your virtual machine if you want to use it. So the same thing happens here. So you control the installation of the database. You control the patching, the updating. You have to do all that, right? So in EC2 instance, it's your responsibility. When it comes to the buckets, you are the one that has to configure the bucket, right? The bucket, you create the bucket, and then you have to configure the bucket, make it, like not block public access, or create versioning for the objects, default encryption, advanced settings. You can have object lock, and then you create the bucket. You select the region where the bucket's going to be, right? You configure this. You have to configure. That's why it's the customer's responsibility. Let's have the second scenario. Okay?
Sir?
Go ahead, please.
Can I ask a stupid question?
Go ahead, please.
Could I put a file in a bucket and then attach that bucket to a VM? Would the file be visible to the VM?
You don't attach a bucket to a VM. It's not attachable. It's a standalone service. You can make it work, but you don't have to attach it. It doesn't depend. Well, as you can see here, right? A web server is working with an S3 bucket, but you don't attach it. It's not attachable. It can be on its own. An EBS volume has to be attached to an instance, otherwise it is useless. A bucket, when you unload, let's say my bucket, right? And let me just create the bucket.
So EBSs are attached. I can attach an EBS to a EC2 instance.
Yes.
Okay.
So my bucket Dunieski, it has to be unique, okay? And it can have capital letter. The name has to be unique in the entire AWS global AWS infrastructure, right? So I can have a bucket here. In my bucket, I can upload a file, right? Upload a file. I'm gonna add a file, and then I'm gonna choose this image, for example, okay? Now this image is gonna be uploaded. Now this image is gonna have a URL that I can give to you, right? I can give to you, and then you can download. You see? So objects, they have a URL. With EBS, that doesn't happen. S3 is never attached to anything. It can work on its own, and it is super durable, and it's one of the most popular services in AWS, and one of the oldest ones too. Okay. I cannot delete it. I have to enter it first. And now I can delete it. We go back to the bucket. Bucket. Now I can delete it. I have to put the name of the bucket. Now delete the bucket. Okay, the bucket is deleted. Okay, nice. Okay, guys, ensure the AWS Management Console is not hacked.
AWS.
Makes sense, right? I don't have to secure the Management Console. That's AWS, right? That's AWS's.
Yes.
Okay. Configure the subnet.
Customer?
But everything that has to do with the configuration of the network is mine. Configuring the VPC.
Customer?
The virtual private cloud is a network. The customer. Protecting against network outages in AWS regions.
AWS.
For sure. I'm not gonna care about that. I mean, I care about the outages in my house, not in AWS regions. Okay.
Yes.
So AWS. Securing the SSH keys.
Customer.
Customer. Okay, you get the keys. You get the keys when you create the key for SSH. You have to download it. You have to secure it. AWS will not do it for you. Okay. Ensuring the network isolation between AWS customers' data.
AWS.
AWS. Okay. Ensuring low latency network connection between the web server and the S3 bucket.
AWS.
AWS. Enforcing multi-factor authentication for all users' logins.
AWS.
No.
Customer. Yeah.
That's you. That's you. Remember, when you create an account, or a user, an IAM,
Okay. I am.
you can enforce policies, right? Right? You can enforce policies. You can make sure that every single user has a policy, right, for the password, and you can enforce MFA. Okay? When you create the user, you can enforce MFA. Okay? This is my organization. This is something that we're going to see later. All right. Okay. So you ensure that every single user has MFA enforced. Okay. That's your responsibility. All right. Good. Now we continue with the next one. With the next slide. Right. So the takeaways here. AWS and the customers share security responsibilities. AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud. The customer is responsible for the security in the cloud.
Can you go back? Come back, sorry, to the, yeah. Okay, thank you.
There's a video, don't forget. All right. AWS is responsible for protecting the infrastructure, including hardware, software.
It's in Nearpod as well. The slides are in Nearpod.
Yeah, Nearpod, and there's a video
And
that run AWS cloud services. For services that are categorized as infrastructure as a service, the customer is responsible for performing necessary security configurations and management tasks. For example, guest OS updates and security patches, firewall, security group configurations. Okay? I am super popular in AWS. Okay. So basically use IAM to control access to your services and resources. That's basically the role of IAM. IAM is for administrators. It's just like an administrator that grants or denies access to users. Resources. And what is a resource? An entity in an AWS account that you can work with. Okay. What could be a resource? An EC2 instance, an S3 bucket, RDS, Lambda, CloudWatch, those resources, right? And you can control who terminates Amazon EC2 instances. And how can you do that? Well, simply using a policy, right? And the policy is what you see here, a policy. You can create a policy, right? A policy that allows access to people, let's say that you want to create a policy. You have a role here, roles, right? Roles are the ones that allowed services, connect with other services, right? So you can have roles here. Maybe you want to attach an inline policy and say EC2, just in case, EC2 And then you have the actions that you can do with EC2. Okay. Let's say permission management, delete network interface, maybe let me see list, describe, all of these guys, read, get, right? Access level, tagging, create tags, delete tags, write. You can have a bunch of things here that you can do with writing, right? And of course, you can terminate instances here. So if I just give you just this policy, this role for you, I create a role for you, right? And then I can simply say that you can terminate instances. So I will select this guy here, and then you can terminate instances, right? So, right? And then I have to select here, this guy, to restrict this, and then I review the policy. You see, it's limited to write. There's one option that you can do. Okay. You know, many services that you cannot do anything about. But for EC2, you can write, and the one that I selected was the one that it just lets you terminate an instance. All right. So you can control access through a policy. Okay. And this is a role that has a policy, right? Roles are the ones that let people interact with other services, people and services. Not only you can attach a role to a person, to a group, to a service. Okay. So that's when we get to roles, we're gonna see more about that. Okay. Let's continue. Okay. So define fine-grained access. The resource, access right, who can access the resource, which resource can be accessed, and what can the user do to the resource, and how resources can be accessed. So that's what IAM defines. And of course, it's free. IAM has no charge whatsoever. It's free completely. You can create as many users as you want, as many groups as you want, as many roles as you want, as many policies as you want. You will not be charged a cent. Okay, it's free. Essential components: a person or application is a user. Okay, so a user could be either a person or an application that can authenticate with an AWS account. Okay, and the user can either authenticate with a password or with username or the keys that we use for the CLI. Guys, remember that the CLI, you can use the CLI even if you're logged out. Okay? If you're logged out, right, you can still do at least the users. I can log out from my console. It doesn't matter. I can still access my AWS account because I use my keys, my secret access key and my access keys to my secret ID and my secret keys, access keys to log in into my account through the CLI. So I can say I am list users, okay? And I can list my users. That's not a problem. I'm logged in the CLI, all right? Okay. What is a group? Well, a group is a collection of users. This IAM users here, the collection of them is a group, okay? And all of them will be granted the same credentials, the same authorization. Why? Because you create the users and you put the users in the same group, okay? It's like I have an administrator group here. The administrators, they have full access to my account. They have full access, administrators access, right? anyone that I create, the user is Dunieski. If I want to create a user and I put it in the group, then that user will also have full access to my account. Okay, so those users are granted the same permission. Okay? A policy is a document that is written in JSON notation, like, JavaScript object notation, a key value pair document. If I just come back to AWS and I take a look at the permissions, I click here, it will show me the JSON policy right here. You see, this guy, the Amazon EC2 full access, it will have full access to the EC2 instance, right? You can do everything there, right? And as you can see, it's value, key, value, key, value, key value. It's a key value document, key value pair document written in JSON, JavaScript object notation, okay? And a role is a useful mechanism to grant a set of permissions for making AWS service requests, okay? So a role is what allows people or services to interact with other services, okay? If you don't have a role, you will not be able to interact or access the account, okay? So when you authenticate as an user, you gain access either programmatically or through the management console, okay? We did this the first day of class. When we created a user, and then we added a user here, you come down here, we give a name to the user, Antonio, and then we can choose either programmatically or AWS Management Console. This guy allows the user to access the AWS resources through the CLI, like you see here. I can see my users here. I can, if I have buckets, I can say S3LS, right? But I don't have any buckets now. It will not show anything. And then I can create a bucket, the bucket S3 make bucket, and then I can give it a name, and the name will be this, for example, right? I created a bucket, right? So I can have access to this guy. If I come here to the buckets, right? I take a look that I just see that my bucket has been created, the one that I just created, right? Or I can simply delete the bucket, AWS S3, remove bucket, and then the name of the bucket. Let me just use the same one that I used before. But now instead of MB, which is main bucket, I'm going to remove the bucket. I just remove the bucket. When I go back to AWS and I refresh, the bucket is gone. Okay, no more buckets. So I can have access to my console as well with my username and password, okay, or my email and password. I can also make API calls with programmatic access and use the SDKs to access my account, okay? So those are the guys that allowed access to AWS account by user, right? We define that when we create an IAM user, okay? The access key ID and the secret access key, those are the ones that let us, configure our CLI. When we do this, AWS configure, remember? And then we introduce the access key ID, the secret access key, and then the default region, and then the output format. And then the CLI is configured, okay? So with those keys, the access key ID and the secret access key, we can log into our account because when we created the user, we gave the user that access, okay? And those keys will be generated for you when you finish creating the user, okay? Authenticate using the account ID or alias. Your account has 12 digits. You can come here where it says support center, right? And then in the support center, you're gonna see your account number here, Okay, it has 12 digits, right? Use the user name and password, and that's it. If enable multi-factor authentication. In my case, I have multi-factor authentication, right? Okay, let me see something here. I think I am here. I am. Policies, providers, account settings, Okay. Dashboard. Okay. 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 We had a user. Then we're giving access. We auto-generate the password. Next permission. Put the user here. Next tags. Next review. And create the user. Okay. Okay. Policies, dashboard, access management. They continue to change things here. Sometimes you get a little lost. Analyzer. Okay. Just give me 1 second, guys. Okay. 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 Oh, yes. So you come here, you look for the user, and then security credentials here. You can click on this is manage authentication. Let me create another user, and then you can see that in your account you should have something similar to this. Assign, like manage your. You see, guys, if you want to, you have to have that MFA in your device. Well, you have to come to the user that you created, which is you, right? You click on it, and then security credentials, right here. You can manage your MFA. In my case, I already have it, right? And then I will have to remove it and then happen again. Okay? But that's how you will create MFA for your account. Okay?
Professor?
Go ahead.
So do you need an MFA for each account you created, or does
you can enforce it. You can enforce it once you create the users. You can have a policy that enforces every single user to use MFA. Okay.
Okay.
An example of a policy could be this, for example. Okay. So the following example IAM policy requires IAM users to use MFA to access specific AWS resources. You see? condition, deny if this is true, if this is false. It says deny here, right? Right? The FET is deny if your multi-factor authentication present is false. So you have to have multi-factor authentication to be able to log in. You're enforcing this with a policy. Okay? So IAM users with AWS Management Console are prompted to enter MFA credentials that can then access AWS services. However, IAM users with the AWS CLI are not prompted to enter MFA authentication credentials and can access AWS services. MFA is with the console. All right. That does answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. You have to enforce it with a policy. There's no other way that you can enforce that. What you can enforce is from the console. What you can enforce is the password. Okay? The password. Here in account settings, you can have a password policy. And then you can enforce your password has to be 8 characters. It has to, it would expire in 90 days. It also requires at least 1 uppercase, right? When you create your password. Because when you create the user, what happens is that you generate a new password for the user, right? You generate it. Like here, it's auto-generated, and you tell the user, next time when you sign in, you have to create a password. But that password has to comply with the policy that I created. Otherwise, it will not let you create a password. Okay? You have to create the policy before you start creating users. Otherwise, the users that were created before the policy was created will not be enforced to create the password. Okay? That way. Okay. I hope that answers your question, John.
Yeah, it did.
Okay, so MFA increased. We saw it already. In addition to username and password, this is a third layer of security, an extra layer of security for your database, not for your database, for your access, for your management console, right? My favorite one is Google Authenticator, which is this one. I haven't had any issues with it whatsoever, right? So it's this guy here with this icon. You're gonna get 2 codes, right? Well, this one is for 2 different accounts, but you're gonna get 2 codes that you will have to, well, actually you get 1 code, but it changes every probably 10 seconds. And when you configure your MFA in your account, the first time it shows the code, you have to enter it and wait for the other one to show, and then you're going to enter the second code, and your MFA will be set up. After that, you only have to use 1 code. It's a little annoying. Every time that you have to log in, you have to grab your phone and do that. It's going to be a little complicated if you lose your phone, because the code is only in your phone, not any other phone. Okay? So you may have to probably call AWS if that happens, or do some research to see what are your options to recover your account. Right? So be careful. You have to know what you're getting yourself into before you set up MFA in your account. Okay? You lose your phone, you lose your access to your account. Okay? Authorization, what actions are permitted? IAM users, IAM group, role, then you have full access or read-only. Those are the policies, full access or read-only. And then you can see everything here in your EC2 instances. You can do, you can terminate, launch, you can update, upgrade, whatever you want to do, with the EC2 instances. And here you can only see the assets inside the bucket, just the objects. You cannot upload, you cannot delete, you cannot update, you can only see. That's it. Okay. Don't forget, policies are the ones that give you or denies access. Okay? I am authorization, right? So I am permissioned, assign permissions by creating an I am policy. We saw that already. Policies are the ones that give you permission. What is a policy? A policy is a JSON document that either allows or denies permissions. Okay, that's what it does. Okay, what is the best practice, right? Least privileges. Okay, least privileges. All permissions are explicitly denied by default. It means that they're by default denied. As simple as that. Okay. Now, if something explicitly denied, it is never allowed. What is the meaning of that? If someone comes in and denies access, it will never be allowed. Okay? Because it was denied, right? This is implicitly denied means that by default it comes like that. No one came in and, no one went in and changed the permissions. But explicitly denied means that someone did it. Okay? This best practice is even recommended by AWS. When you take a look at the account settings, well, actually it's in the dashboard. Let me take a look at the dashboard. One moment, let me go back. Dashboard, that gives you the best practices here. Okay? And I believe that I can paste this on Slack for you guys to have an idea, because best practices is oftentimes asked in the exam. Okay. And I think that the links are still clickable, even if I pasted it there, right? Always, give the least privileged access. And as the need arises, then start incrementing the permissions. Okay. IAM is global, guys. IAM is not subjected to any region. It's global, as you can see here. It's a global service. And setting apply across all AWS regions. Okay. An IAM policy is a document that defines permissions, enables fine-grained access control, two types of policies, identity-based and resource-based. Okay. Identity-based is based on your identity can even be attached to a user or a group. Okay. This is for identities. And the resource-based is just attached to a resource, such as an S3 bucket. And by the way, S3 buckets, they have their own policies as well. All right. So an identity. An identity policy is attached to a user, a group, or a role, and the policies can specify actions that may not be performed by the entity, actions that may be performed by the entity. Okay? Because, the IAM policy either denies or allows permissions. Okay? A single policy can be attached to multiple users. A single entity can have multiple policies attached to it. Right? So you can grab a user and give the user 100 policies, right? And the same policy can be assigned to 100 users. So it doesn't matter. It's a many-to-many relationship, okay? You have a policy here, and it's attached to a user, a group, or a role, okay? Remember, roles are responsibilities that you as a person can have, or a service can have to access other services or to interact with other services, and they have to have a policy that either restricts or grants access. Okay? Policy is a very important document. Okay? It's a very important document. And don't forget, it's a many-to-many relationship. You can have one policy attached to 100 users or 100 resources, and you can have 100 resources using the same policy. Or you can have a user that have, or a resource that have multiple policies. This is an example policy, right? You know, this is explicitly allowed. Someone remember guys that by default, everything is denied. So if someone comes and allows it, it means that it's explicitly allowed, okay? Explicitly means that someone came in and changed it. That's what it means, okay? So this person or this resource have access to DynamoDB table, a specific DynamoDB table, whatever DynamoDB table is after this, and also S3, okay? And the DynamoDB is going to be the name, this one. This is the name of the ARN of the DynamoDB. The ARN is the Amazon resource name. And you see here, this is the ARN, right? Which has the service, DynamoDB, the region, the account number, the table name. So this specific table, the user can do everything for that table. And with this specific bucket, the user can do anything with the bucket, also with the resources inside the bucket, like the files and assets, features, images, videos, all that, okay? Now, this is explicitly denied, ensures that the users cannot use any other service, any other actions or resources other than the table and those buckets, okay? So what it says here is you will deny, okay, if it is not this table or this bucket. That's what it says. So you will allow if it is this table, this bucket, and here you will deny if it is not this table and if it is not this bucket, okay? And if you have allow and deny will be first because deny has precedence over allow, okay? When you see allowed and deny in the same policy, deny will be first. Because when it is denied, it's for a reason. And that deny is important. So allowed, even if it comes first, it doesn't matter. It will read the entire thing and say denied. Okay? And an explicit deny statement takes precedence over an allow statement. If it is an implicit denied, then allow will work because an explicit deny means that it was by default denied. But if someone comes in and denies it, that deny will be first before anything else. Okay? Good. Resource-based policies, identity-based policies are attached to a group, user group or role. Resource-based policies are attached to a resource, not to a user, group, or role. Characteristics of resource-based policies specifies who has access to a resource and what actions they can perform on it. The policies are inline only, not managed. Inline is this, okay? When you come here to the row and you see this row, for example, you can add an inline policy, okay? Inline policy is for this specific policy, right? A managed policy is a policy that it can be applied to any role or anything, but an inline is very specific of this role because I'm creating it for this role. This inline policy doesn't exist for any other role, it's just for this one, okay? So that's why I say resource-based policies are inline only, not managed. And managed is the one that you can see here, right? It's loading now. These are the managed ones, okay? These are the managed ones. These are the ones that AWS created for us. That's the managed one. And of course, you can create your own policy and it will be a custom managed policy. I think that I added this. Let me see. I added this before. This was done by me, right? That's why it's called a customer managed policy right here. Okay. This is a managed policy managed by AWS. AWS created it for you guys. For everybody that creates an AWS account, this is standard for everybody. And you can also have an inline policy, which is only applied to this role only. This role for EC2 role for SSM. Okay. That's an inline policy. Resource-based policies are supported only by some AWS services, okay? So we have here an identity-based policy. We have I am user Mary Major attached identity policy, policy grants list, read objects to the photos bucket, okay? AWS account. And then we have a resource-based policy, S3 bucket photos, defined inline on the bucket, right? You have an inline bucket policy that says grant user Mary Major list and read objects. Okay, so that's what allows Mary Major list and read objects. Okay, that's a resource-based policy. This is doesn't matter who's coming to access it. What it matters is what is the policy attached to. That's what it is. It's attached to a resource. This one is attached to a user. As you can see, it says here policy grants user Mary Major list and read. Even though there's a person here, the policy is not attached to a person like this. It's attached to a resource. That's why it's called resource-based policy. Okay? And you can define this in the bucket policies, okay? You can say that only someone for a particular account or with username Mary Major can list read objects, okay? So that's very important. That's why tagging is important too, tagging resources, because you can use the tag to allow or deny access to identify the service by tagging through the tag, and then restrict or allow access. So how it works? Okay, is the permission explicitly denied? If it is yes, deny. Right? Remember, if it is explicitly denied, it will never be allowed. Okay, so if it is yes, deny. If it is no, then it checks if it is explicitly allowed. Right? If it is explicitly allowed, someone came in and said allow, then it's allowed. If it is not, deny. Okay? And that is implicitly denied. Okay? If no one came in, right? If no one came in and it is not, if no one came in and said this is allowed, then it's by default denied. That's why it says implicit denied. So whenever the policy is written, this is the way, the direction it takes to understand and determines if the person or the service is allowed or not. Okay? It checks for explicit denied. It is not explicit denied. No one came in and denied it. Then it checks for explicit allowed. No one came in and allowed. It means that it hasn't been touched ever. That's why it's by default denied. Okay? If it is explicitly denied, someone came in and denied it, then it's denied. No access at all whatsoever, nothing. If it is explicitly allowed, then everything is allowed because someone came in and said allow. If none of this is true, then no one ever came in and changed anything. That's why it's implicitly denied and you deny it. Of course, this can be modified, right? You can make an explicit deny, or explicit allow. Okay? This is just by default. Like the S3 bucket by default is implicitly denied because the bucket is private by default. Okay? And also the security groups are implicitly denied because by default, no port is open. So IAM groups. An IAM group is a collection of US IAM users. A group of is used to grant the same permissions to multiple users. Permissions granted by attaching IAM policies or policies to the group. A user can belong to multiple groups. There's no default group, and groups cannot be nested. It means that you cannot a group inside a group. That's what it means. It cannot be nested. Okay. There's no default group. No group is created for you. When you create an account, you have to create a group, right? And a user can be a developer, can be in the developers group. A user can be an administrator. It can be in the administrators group too, right? So let's see a group as a big user with a bunch of permissions, and then your children come and join you, and they will inherit those permissions. Okay, same thing. A group is a collection that has permissions, and every single user that is put in that group will inherit every single permission that the group has. Okay, so we have an AWS account, we have admins, Carlos Salazar, Marcia Oliveira, and then we have developers, Lee Juan, Mary Major, Richard Rowe, and we have testers, Zamway, John Stiles, Lee Juan. You see, Lee Juan is in the tester group, but it's also in the developer group. Okay, so you can be in several groups, right? But don't forget, you never have a group inside a group. Okay, that is not possible, right? Guys, any questions? No?
No.
Okay, an IAM role is an IAM entity with specific permissions. It's similar to a user. You attach permissions policies to it. But the difference between a user and a role is that a user is permanent and a role is temporary. Okay? A user is permanent and a role is temporary. Okay? It is not uniquely associated with a person, with one person. It can be attached to every single user group or anything or service. I mean, it's not attached to a specific person, and is assumable by a person, application, or service. What is assumable? Well, you create the role, you assign the role, and the entity receiving the role will assume it. You will take it, right? That's what it means. And it provides temporary credential, security credentials. Let's say that someone is coming to your company to audit a company, but the person is going to be there for 1 week only. So instead of creating an IAM user, why not create a role for that guy, and then you give them the permission they need? That's it. That's temporary. Okay. An IAM user is permanent. Okay. When the person is finished, I mean, when the person is fired or the person is laid off or the person is just find another job, you just delete the user. That's it. Example of how IAM roles are used to delegate access. Used by an IAM user in the same AWS account as the role. Okay. Used by an AWS service such as Amazon EC2 in the same account as a role, and used as an IAM user by an IAM user in a different account down the road. So you can have cross-account roles. Someone from another account can have a role and access your account, your services. Roles are the ones that allow or deny permission to services. Okay, but the only difference between roles and IAM user is that a user is permanent, right? And is uniquely associated with one person, right? As a user. And also that the role is, temporary, right? And the user is permanent. That's the main difference between. Okay. A role allows services to interact with each other. Okay. if Lambda has to shut down an EC2 instance, Lambda needs a role that allows access to EC2 instance. Otherwise, Lambda will never be able to do that. You will get an error saying that you're not authorized, or Lambda is not authorized to do that operation. So you need a role to be able to do that. Okay. Example use of an IAM role. Scenario, an application that runs on an EC2 instance needs access to an S3 bucket. That's what I said before, right? This EC2 instance right here, it needs a role to be able to access the EC2, the S3 buckets, okay? So the application has permission to access the S3 bucket. Why? Because there is a policy that is attached to a role, and the role is assigned to the EC2 instance, and the EC2 instance assumes the role, and then it can access that. Guys, if this doesn't exist, the application will never be able to access the S3 buckets. It can't. And that's for the buckets protection. That's for the buckets protection. You're trying to protect your bucket, right? You're trying to protect your bucket. And the only way that you can protect your bucket is by just creating a role, and then the role allows for access or not access, okay? This has to be done before the EC2 instance tries to access the bucket. Otherwise, you're gonna get a non-authorized operation, okay? Create the policy. Well, the policy exists there already. If you take a look at the policies, we have policies here that says S3 bucket, S3, and then you have X3 full access. So you have to give this access to an S3 bucket, to an EC2 instance, right? Or simply create a role, right? Just find the role, right? Take a look at the roles. One role that you can create, right? EC2 instance. This is for the EC2 instance. And then you can give permissions to the EC2 instance and say S3, right? And in S3, maybe you can maybe no S3 read only. So you give access to read only, tagging. Okay, I would say name, maybe access S3 read only, maybe, right? So that will be the tag, right? Next review, I give it a name. I can say EC2 S3 read only access, just the name, right? And allow EC2 to call AWS service on your behalf. In this case is read only, right? I create a role, and the role is created. So I can assign this to an EC2 instance. The EC2 instance will assume it, and then the EC2 instance can read assets or objects from the S3 bucket. So I can come here and just type this, and it will show the one that I just created. Okay, I can take a look at it, and I can say this, the JSON policy, it allows me get and list. That's it, no more. Okay, I can only read here. Okay, so this will allow my EC2 instance. I can come here and create an EC2 instance real quick before we go on break. Okay, let me just create an EC2 instance, right? This is a virtual machine in AWS. When I come to this part, I choose the instance type that I wanna use. I wanna use the one that is a free tier, right? The T2 micro. I'm not gonna be charged. And then when I come to this section, I can just choose here the one that I created, EC2 read-only access. So I attach this role to this EC2 instance, and it will assume by it. So if I want to access S3 buckets, then this virtual machine will be able to do it because it has a role attached. Okay. IAM role automatically deploys AWS credentials to resources that assume it. Select the instance profile that contains the required IAM role. If you create your IAM role using the console, the instance profile has the same name as your IAM role. Learn about roles. Okay, so it has the role here. As simple as that. Okay, if you don't have any role, you can create it from here. It's going to take you to IAM, and that's what you created there in IAM. Okay, so AWS is very organized when it comes to setting up things. Okay, so you define the IAM policy first. You attach the policy to a role and allow the EC2 instance to assume the role. That is exactly what I just did. Okay. Do you guys understand what I did?
Can you just repeat?
Okay. I created the role, right? I created the role, and the role I named it S3, read only. Before I created a role, I attached the policy. So let me go here again, roles, and then I created a role, right? When I created a role, I chose the service that's going to use the role. Okay. In this case, it's going to be an EC2 instance. It could be Lambda. It could be anything else. EC2 instance, right? Permission. Now I'm going to attach the policy to the role. The policy already exists. Okay. It's S3 read only. Okay. It would allow my EC2 instance to read only. Right. I come the next tag. I put a tag, but I don't have to. And then I gave it a name, and that's it. I gave it a name. I created a role that has S3 read-only access. Then when I create my instance, right, my virtual machine, I have to select the role that I created. So I can come here and select the role. It's right here, the one that I created. I attach it, and I proceed and continue creating the instance, right? But the role is already attached. That role would let my EC2 instance, my virtual machine, to interact with the S3 bucket. But it can only read and, it can only list and get, only that. Those are the only things that you can do, okay? If I take a look at this policy, it only lets me get and list, basically read only. It's right here. Takeaways. IAM policies are constructed with JavaScript object notation, JSON, and define permissions. IAM policies can be attached to an IAM entity. Entity are IAM users, IAM groups, and IAM roles. An IAM user provides a way for a person, application, or service to authenticate to AWS. An IAM group is a simple way to attach the same policies to multiple users. An IAM role can have permissions policies attached to it, and it can be used to delegate temporary access to users or applications. We can watch this, right? Let's watch this.
In this setup demo, I'll show you examples of identity and access management, or IAM. I've got the console open here, so I'll click on IAM. The first example I'll show you is configuring a role that can be assumed by an EC2 instance. So I'll click on Roles and then Create a Role. So the trusted entity in this example is going to be an EC2 instance, but you can see there are other examples of other entities that can be trusted. I'll click on EC2. Imagine we have an application running on an EC2 instance that needs access to S3 buckets. Well, let's set those permissions up. I'll click Next. A role can have policies associated with it. So let's see what policies we already have that include S3. So we have an Amazon S3 full access, a read-only access, gives us read-only access to all buckets. That sounds like that would work for my application, so I'll select that one. Maybe it also needs access to DynamoDB. And we've got one here, DynamoDB read-only access. Let's go for that one. And lastly, I'll click Review and give the role a name. I'll call it My App Role. And you can see the two policies it has here and create that role. Now, if I go to EC2s, I'll launch an instance, pick the default Linux Amazon AMI, go for the default instance type, configure the instance details, and now you can see the My App role appears here. If I were to use this when I create the EC2 instance, the EC2 instance would then have the policies that are associated to that role. It would be able to read from DynamoDB and S3. Well, that's an example of using it for EC2. I'll cancel this and I'll go back to IAM. IAM is a service that lets you securely control access to AWS resources by particular entities. So that entity could be an EC2 instance or it could be a user. Let's create a group and we'll create a user inside the group. Let's imagine we have a group of network operators. I'll call the group name NetOps. I can apply one of the policies to this group. So maybe my NetOps group should have full access to the VPC. So I'll select this one for NetOps and click Next Step. So we have a NetOps group and we've got Amazon VPC full access. So this is a policy that's pre-configured for us. And I'll create that group. Now I'll create a user. So I'll add a user and we'll call this user Dave. And Dave's going to have management console access, auto-generated password that they have to change when they log in. Set the permissions for Dave. Well, if we put Dave into the NetOps group, then he's going to inherit the roles that are associated with that group. So I'll add him to the group and click Review. He's in the group NetOps. Let's create user. And then I could send the credentials to Dave, or I could ask him to log in and set his password. Let me go back and click on Dave. You can see the permissions that Dave has is Amazon VPC full access because of the group that he has membership of, which is the NetOps group. If I select policies here, we can see the built-in policies that I've been using in my examples, but we could also create our own policies. There's a visual editor where you can choose services, actions, resources, and request conditions. And you can also write your own policies in JSON. This allows you to create custom sets of policies that could be for particular users or groups or other resources. Remember, IAM is based on a principle of least privilege. No entity or user should have any more privileges than they need.
Guys, do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, so let's break for 10 minutes and let's be back here at 11:01. Okay?
Okay.
Let's continue, guys. So now we're going to talk about securing a new AWS account. Okay. Okay. So very important, guys. Never use the root account, okay, for anything. Right? AWS recommends, not using the root account, but instead create an IAM user, all right, and give that IAM user all the privileges. With the account root user, you have the privileges, all the privileges in the world, and they cannot be controlled. It means that you cannot change. The only way to change things is just by closing the account. You cannot alter the controls of the root user. It's just the master account that cannot be modified. As simple as that. It cannot be modified. Okay? And you have all the resources all the access to every single resource in your account. Every single resource. Okay? An IAM user may have some limitations. It all depends on what permissions you add to the user. Okay? IAM integrates with AWS services, identity federation, secure access for applications, and granular permissions. Guys, identity federation has to do with, Google, Facebook, all those kinds of access providers, okay, and authentication providers. Okay, so best practice: do not use the root user except for necessary. Access to the account root users requires logging with the email address and the password that you use to create the account. In simple actions that you can only be done with account root user. Update the account root user password. You can do that in your account. You can change the support plan. In our case, right now, we have the basic support plan, right? You can restore the IAM user's permissions, right? When you create an IAM user, you can restore the permissions. And you can change some settings like contact information, allow region. So those are settings that you can modify with an account, root account, and also things that you can modify with it. Okay, but there's nothing else that you can do. Those privileges that comes with it, you cannot change that. Okay. So AWS recommends not using the root account, but instead create a root user. And I think that we did it already, guys. We created an IAM user. At least I have mine. And I think that we did it on the first day of class, right? I have my user. This is my IAM user, okay? That's the one that I use to log in the CLI, okay? That's the one that I use for the CLI. Okay? This is not the one that I use for logging in because I'm using my root account. This is not a production account, so I can do that, okay? AWS as well, it recommends deleting the access key and the secret access key as well. Okay, it recommends that. It recommends to delete the access key ID and the secret access key from the root account. Just delete them because you don't use this for the CLI. Please remember that if someone get access to these keys, they can log into your account as a root user, right? And then they can do whatever they want in your account. So instead, use the keys that were provided to you when you create the IAM user, and give that IAM user administrator's privileges, so you can go ahead and do things in your account. So securing a new AWS account root user, stop using the account root user as soon as possible. That is recommended by AWS. The account user has unrestricted access to all the resources. It's the one that contains everything. If I were to hack into your account, I would go for your account root user keys instead of going for the ones of the IAM users. Okay. Create an IAM user for yourself and save the access keys if needed. Okay. Create an IAM group, give it all the full administrator permissions to the IAM group, right? And add the users to the group. Disable and remove your account root user access keys if they exist. Remove them. You don't need them. Okay? So I can come here. And I don't have my guys. Okay? I don't have them. Okay? What I do, I have them here. So what I have to do is just delete them. I don't need them. Okay? So do that. Do it in your account. You don't need them. This is only for the CLI, right? And I'm going to delete these guys, right? That's what AWS recommends. So they're deleted. Okay. If you need to create more, right, you can simply create the access new keys, and then it will create one for you. Okay. Okay. That's very important. So here in the dashboard, you can click on my access keys, and then it will take you to your credentials. And this is when you can set MFA as well, if you want to. The access keys are here. They're disappear already. I won't let anyone access my CLI, access my account through a CLI with the access keys, so I delete them. That's AWS recommendation for access keys. And always signing with your IAM user credentials. Right now, I'm signing as a root user because this is, this is not a, it's just for a class, but I can simply go to the dashboard and grab this guy here, this URL, and log out, right? And then paste that URL. It contains everything that I need now, and then I just sign in. I have MFA as well for that, for my account as well. So I have to come to my MFA and look for the one that has to do with Dunieski Otano. So this guy, and then it's just asking me to, I don't remember my password here. All right, let me use this one. Probably tells me that I'm using the same password. Authentication information is incorrect. Oh my God. I have to go back to my root account and be able to change the password of that guy, because I never use it. So I forgot the password that I used for that one. Okay. So let me see if I can change the password of that guy. So I can choose a different password here. Done. So I'm gonna come here to the dashboard. And I think that I copied this already, but I'm gonna use it again. So now I can copy this, comes to Niesky, and I'm gonna use the password that I use. Ask me for MFA, and update this. MFA. And then I log in as Dunieski at Dunieski Autonomy. Right? Now I am logged in as an IAM user, right? And I can see myself here, right? So I can come here and my access keys, I can see the access keys here, right? These are the ones that I'm using right now as an IAM user. And some of the things that I cannot see is the billing section. You see, I don't have permissions to the billing section. So even though I am an administrator, I don't have access to this. Only the root account have access to this. So I have to attach a policy to this user that allows these users to see the billing section of this. I don't have any permissions to do this. So enable the password policy for users. Sign in with your new IAM user credentials. That's what I did. Store your account or your users' credentials in a secure place, okay? Because they're super important. Okay? Enable multi-factor authentication MFA. Require MFA for your account root user and for all IAM users. Remember the policy that I show you guys? You can also use MFA to control access to AWS service APIs. Okay. Option for retrieving the MFA token. We have the Google Authenticator and Authy Authenticator. That's for Windows Phone apps. So Windows Phone app. U2F security key devices, for example, YubiKey, hardware MFA options like key fog or display card offered by Gemalto. So different options. I prefer to go with the Google Authenticator. All right. You have multiple choices, guys. You can choose whatever is better for you. Use AWS CloudTrail. We saw CloudTrail last class. I think it was last class. We saw that this guy has an event history where it just records everything that can be showed. CloudTrail tracks user activity on your account. It logs all the API requests and resources in all supported devices. Okay, one moment, guys. Okay, so you can also, okay, one moment. Use CloudTrail. It logs the API request resources in all supported devices, services your account. Basic AWS Trail event history is enabled by default. And 3, it contains on management event data on the latest 90 days of account activity. Okay, to access CloudTrail, simply come here where it says CloudTrail. CloudTrail. And kind of weird what happens with the IAM users. So I'm going to use my root account. Okay. I'm going to use my root account. I'm going to log in with my root account. And then I'm going to show you this with my root account. Okay. CloudTrail. Okay. What's going on here? Is CloudTrail experiencing any problem? Let me see. This is what's showing me what's going on in AWS infrastructure right now. In North America, there's no issues here. There's no recent events. Why am I not able to see CloudTrail here? I cannot see CloudTrail. Something is going on here. CloudTrail. I cannot see CloudTrail. Guys, can you see CloudTrail in your account? Just give it a try. Just in the services here, type CloudTrail. CloudTrail. And see what happens. Let's see if you get something. If you don't get anything, it means that, I don't know. Just let me know if you see CloudTrail, please.
In the IAM account or in the root account?
Root account.
Yeah, I see it.
You see it?
Yeah.
Create a trail page.
Yeah. Same here.
Yeah, they give you like the window to create a trail.
Yeah, because you have to enable that. I mean, I don't have anything here. It's not showing anything for me. I don't know what's going on here. I have no idea. It's not even showing anything. Okay, I guess, I don't know. I mean, I don't care right now. But CloudTrail has an event history section that it shows you everything that happened, how when you logged in this morning, what you did, if you deleted something, it shows you everything. Okay. So choose CloudTrail service, event history to view, filter, and search the last 90 days of events. To enable logs beyond 90 days and enable specified event alerting, create a trail. Okay. Create a trail, give it a name, apply to all regions, and create a new Amazon S3 bucket for log storage. Right. And then configure access restrictions to the S3 bucket. For example, only admins users should have access to the account, to the S3 bucket. Okay. So basically, you go to a CloudTrail, check the event history, create a trail, create it for all, apply for all regions, and then create a bucket. And then in the bucket, only limit the access to the admins for them to see it. Right. Securing a new account, AWS account, billing reports, enable a billing report such as AWS cost and usage report. So that's something that I did last night, and I tried to delete the services that I was not using by just coming here to the cost and usage reports, right? And create a report here, right? And just give it a name. Next, you can have a bucket and do it every hour, every day, every month, and then create new report version, override the existing report, enable report data integration with Athena, just to display it as a table with using SQL, or Amazon Redshift or Amazon QuickSight for visualization of your data. Visualize it. Okay. Let me come back. You enable reports. Spend data for your account is being populated. You can take up to 24 hours to populate. All right. You can take a look at the Cost Explorer and launch Cost Explorer, and then you can see the costs that you've had. What's going on here? What's happening here? I was even charged yesterday. EC2 ELB, Elastic Load Balancer. EC2 instances. Config. Let me take a look at config to see if I have something that is taking my money. Okay. Config. Let me take a look at the rules. I have 3 rules here. They're taking money from me. Okay. Can I delete them? Okay. Okay. Delete results. Okay. And I think that, you know, guys, it's a little, I mean, it's very subtle the way that AWS takes the money from you. If you're not on top of that, they will take the money from you without telling you. Well, they don't need to tell you. You're the one that has to be responsible for that, right? But these rules are taking my money.
Where do you see they're charging you?
Okay, right here. If I take a look at the Cost Explorer, and then the Cost Explorer, I take a look at, it says here, my account. My account costs us 24%. And then it would tell me here, the days, October 1st, October 2nd, and then I come here and it says yesterday. Okay, I cleaned everything yesterday at night, but before then they charged me 1 cent for relational databases, 7 cents for key management service. But I don't know, I don't have anything in key management service, KMS. I don't have anything in KMS. Oh, I have two keys here that are pending deletion. Okay, you see, I'm trying to delete these guys, but they will be deleted after 7 days. So I can see my costs here. We have to call AWS guard duty. It's charging me 2 cents for guard duty, 4 cents for Mazy, 1 cent for relational base, 40 cents for config, 33 cents for instances. I don't have any instances right now. I'm gonna take a look tomorrow again because I cleaned everything last night, and they charged me $1.96 yesterday. Okay. So this is the guy that can tell you, Cost Explorer, to tell you, you know, where your cost is coming from. Okay. The costs that you are incurring here, where they're coming from. That's the Cost Explorer. So it's good to have, you know, a billing report, right? Billing reports provide information about your use, AWS usage, and estimate costs for that use. AWS delivers the reports to an Amazon S3 bucket that you specify. Report is updated at least once per day, daily, hourly, monthly, you know. And the AWS cost and user report tracks your AWS usage and provides estimated charges associated with your AWS account, either by the hour or by the day. Okay, that's what we saw in the cost and usage report section. Takeaways, guys. Takeaways. Best practices to use to secure an AWS account. Secure logins with multi-factor authentication, MFA. Delete account root user access keys, create individual IAM users and grant permissions according to the principle of least privilege, use groups to assign permissions to IAM users, configure a strong password policy, delegate users roles instead of sharing credentials, and monitor account activity by using AWS CloudTrail. So those are the things that you can use to secure your account, okay? MFA to all the users, don't forget that. MFA, multi-factor authentication, an extra layer of security. Delete, just like I did, delete all the access keys from your root account. Instead, don't use the root account. Instead, guys, even if you don't do it, because this is just an account for testing, you know, exploring, experimenting with AWS, know this. You cannot, or you don't use your root account or root user for anything, right? Instead, create an IAM user and give them administrator's privileges, okay? If you want them to do everything in the account, if you want other users to have restricted access, then just go with the principle of the least privilege, okay? Create groups, right? Give the permissions to a group and then put the user in the group, okay? Instead of going user by user, giving them permissions, create groups. That's much easier, right? It's a less administrative responsibilities and duties, right? And work. Create a user, give them the permission, and then put the user inside the group. Okay, create the group, give them the permission, put the users inside the group. Okay? Have a strong password policy. And then you can come here where it says account settings, right? In the IAM section. And then I think I have shown it this several times. Just change the password policy. I have one. Just make it a little more strict, right? Okay. Delegate using roles instead of sharing credentials. Use a role and monitor the account with CloudTrail. You know, CloudTrail is a service for tracking, you know, governance, auditing, compliance. Okay. We're gonna have the lab today. Lab 1, Introduction to IAM. We're gonna explore the user and groups, add users to groups, signing and test users. And this is gonna be the final product of your account, okay? Of your lab, I'm sorry. It's gonna be the final product. We're gonna do the lab. Let's just finish this module and then we'll do the lab. Securing accounts. We have something called organizations, okay? Organizations, what they do, just enable you to consolidate multiple AWS accounts so you can centrally manage them. Security features of AWS organizations. You can have multiple organizational units and you put the accounts inside, right? And those accounts are called member accounts. You put the accounts inside. You integrate that with IAM, right? So you give permissions to a user and the user will be allowed by the organization and is granted by IAM in that account. Users will be in the accounts. Accounts will have permissions in the organization. So what is the difference between an organization and IAM? We're gonna have something called a service control policy. This is right here, right? And in the service control policies, you have permissions. Those permissions will be given to accounts. Organizations is for accounts. IAM policies is for users. So users, groups, and roles, okay? That's the big difference. And how do you see that? Let me show you organizations in AWS by just typing organizations, okay? I have an organization here. I can organize my account, right? I have my root account here. I have a testing OU. OU is organizational unit. It's like a folder, right? And inside the folder, I'm gonna have something called member accounts. So you can send an invitation to another account, right? To another account in your organization, in your company, right? You can invite another account, right? You can either invite or create an account, and then the account will be added to that organizational unit, okay? And then you can have a more centralized control of all the accounts of your organization. You can have something called consolidated billing, and you can have only one bill for the entire organization. You know, instead of having 24 bills, you can have only one bill that includes all the expenses of all the accounts, and then one pay one bill. Okay, that's very beneficial, very good to have only one bill. Okay, so you can apply to every single organization. Let me just click here. To every single organization, you can apply something called service control policies, right? And if you apply that to the root account, all of the accounts in this tree view here, this is a tree view. You can have no tree view, tree view. This is easy to understand. If you apply a service control policy to the root account, all of the guys under that root account will inherit that policy. Okay, it's like a group. When you apply the permission to the group, every single user that you put inside the group will inherit those permissions. Same thing here. You apply a policy. This guy has a policy full access, right? Full AWS access. The other ones, if I take a look at testing, if I take a look at this, they also have full access because they are inside the root account. Okay. So if I take a look at this cleaning, right? This is cleaning. Cleaning also has full access. Okay. So I can detach this from this guy, and you can now remove the last policy attached to the specific target. You must have at least one attached at all time. I can attach this one. Okay. And now I can detach this one, and that's it. Perfect. Now, if I take a look at cleaning, cleaning has full access, and okay, full access is not attached, and access is attached. Okay, so simply they inherit the one from the root account, but you can come in and alter this, modify it. Okay, right now this organizational unit can only have full access to EC2 instances. That's it, nothing else. So this account can only do that. Okay, so you can create an account for developers, for example, and the developers can work with EC2 instances, but they cannot work with S3 because they don't have the access here. Okay, this is for accounts, not for users. This is at the account level. Organizations is at the account level. IAM users is at the user level, group level, and role level. Do you guys see the difference between them? Yes, no, maybe, perhaps. You there, guys?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good. Service control policies offer centralized control over accounts, limited permissions that are available in an account that is a part of an organization, ensures that accounts comply with access control guidelines. Okay, SCPs are similar to IAM user policies, similar. They use similar syntax, okay? However, an SCP never grants permission. Instead, SCPs specify the maximum permissions for an organization. They never grant permission, they just specify the maximum permissions of an organization, okay? They're similar because they have the same or similar syntax. They both use JSON, okay? So that's the difference between the policies. AWS Key Management Service, that's another service that we can use. You can create your encryption keys, and that's what I said, what I show here, guys. KMS, Key Management Service, and then I have my own key here. I can create a new key if I want to. It can be symmetric or asymmetric. Okay. Remember that symmetric, we only have one key. For encryption is the same key for decryption. And asymmetric, we have both keys, a public key and a private key that can be used for encrypt and decrypt. Okay, that's asymmetric. If you want to know more about this, you can do some research. It's not in the scope of this certification. For solutions architect, it is. And for DevOps, it is too, developer, all those guys. Okay. But this is a guide that allows you to create encryption keys, okay, that can be used for encrypting and decrypting. Okay. So enables you to control the use of encryption across AWS services and your applications. It integrates with AWS CloudTrail to log all the key usage, right? Remember that CloudTrail will record everything that is used, okay? Everything. Uses hardware security modules, HSMs, that are validated by further information. HSMs, cloud HSMs, is the hardware security modules, uses asymmetric encryption, okay? And that is something that is not in the scope of this class either, but you only need to know that KMS uses symmetric, KMS uses symmetric, and Cloud HSM uses asymmetric, okay? That's something that you guys need to know. It also uses processing standard like 140 FIPS 142 protect keys, type of encryptions and keys that it uses. Amazon Cognito is also good. It just adds sign in, sign up, and access to your web and mobile applications. It scales to millions of users. It has Cognito user pools and Cognito identity pools. If you take a look at Cognito here, Cognito, right? We can see that it has user pools and identity pools, okay? The user pools, right? It gives you user pool the scripted name so you can easily, so the user pool is a pool of users that you create here in this account, in this AWS account, okay? And federated identities are the ones that come from another, probably from your on-prem, and then you let them, authenticate as well. Right? Okay, Cognito can support unauthenticated identities by providing a unique identifier, AWS creates for users who do not authenticate with an identity provider. And what's an identity provider? Do you guys know any identity provider?
Active Directory?
That is one. What else? It's right here. Facebook, Google, Amazon, and then enterprise identity providers as a Microsoft Active Directory via security assertion markup language, SAML. Right? So identity providers can be either social or enterprise. Okay, social, the ones that we know already, and enterprise is Active Directory, which is directory services in AWS. Okay, directory services, service in AWS. You can use your corporate credentials to log in here. Okay, you can create a directory and use these kind of directories to connect to the on-prem. Okay, and then you can, those guys from the on-prem can authenticate themselves and access the AWS account. Okay, so Cognito is used for that. Okay, and it's for web and mobile applications. Okay, guys, you don't need to know how this works unless you go for the solutions architect certifications. You don't need to use it and know exactly how it works For this certification, you need to know that it's used for sign up, sign in with web and mobile applications. Okay? And it supports different identity providers, social and enterprise, social like Facebook, Google, and Amazon, and enterprise Active Directory using SAML, which is security assertion markup language, which is basically a token, a security token that is given to you to access the security, the account. AWS Shield is a managed distribution denial service protection service, right? It's what, like I said before, it's used for DDoS, okay? Used for DDoS. Right? Sorry, DDoS, distributed denial service, okay? Safeguards applications running on AWS and provides always-on detection and automatic inline. It has two, like I said before, it has the standard that is enabled for you at no cost, it's free. And then the AWS Shield Advanced is an optional paid service. You don't have to pay for it, it's just optional, right? You don't have to have it. And it's used to minimize what? Downtime and latency, because remember, when you have DDoS accounts, DDoS attacks, it will just give you a huge downtime, because it would just overwhelm your system, and your system will not serve the legitimate users because it's being overwhelmed. It's being bombarded with requests from customers that are not legitimate. It's just an attacker that is attacking your system with requests. Then it will overwhelm your system. And when the actual legitimate users request your services, you will not be able to provide it because you're so overwhelmed that you cannot do it. The server cannot do it. And that's why it's called denial service. Okay. Now, securing data on AWS. You can encrypt the data at rest, right? You can use KMS. Remember one we did in the S3 bucket, right? So we can do that at rest, right? Encryption of data is supported by AWS. And what is encryption? Encryption is just data that is encoded and is not humanly readable. You cannot read it. And you will need a key to be able to read it. Okay? You need a key to make it unreadable, and you need a key, if it is symmetric, you need the same key to make it readable, right? If it is asymmetric, you need a public key to make it unreadable, and a private key to make it unreadable. So that's how it works. It just encodes the data, and it's not understandable. You cannot understand it. That's it. Simple, right? Only those who have the key can decode the data. No one else. Okay. And KMS is an Amazon and a key management system, right? So it manages your keys when you have KMS. When you enable data at rest or server-side encryption, same thing. In an S3 bucket, you don't have to provide any keys. AWS has the keys and everything. Okay? So what is the meaning of data at rest? It means that where the data is already, you can encrypt it. Okay? The data is stored physically on a disk or a tape or a bucket, right? It's there. So you can encrypt it because it's at rest. In transit, it's in movement, right? It's moving. Right? While it moves, is encrypted. At rest is when it's there. Okay? So you can encrypt data stored in any service that is supported by KMS, including Amazon S3, EBS, Elastic File System, RDS managed databases. So if you take a look at when we create an instance, right? EC2 instance, we get to the portion when we have to select the storage. Okay? And it's going to be the fourth step. Okay, right here. We can select encryption, and it's going to be used KMS, right? Key Management Service. right? And then we can select the one by default or the ones that you already created. These are the ones that I created, okay? So I can select this one and my EVS volume is going to be encrypted, okay? Now, also, when I create a volume, right, before I attach it to an EC2 instance, I have the opportunity to encrypt the volume to using KMS as well, okay? It's using KMS. So that is supported as well in EVS. So KMS supports S3, EBS, Elastic File System, and Amazon RDS managed databases. Okay. Now, data in transit is when the data is moving across the network. Okay. So you have the transport layer security, TLS, formerly known as SSL, which is secure socket layer. It's an open standard protocol. Okay, to make your data, secure. You can have certificates as well that provides a way to manage, deploy, and renew TSL or SSL certificates. Certificates is just what you put in your website. This, you see this lock here, it means that it has a certificate. The certificate is valid. You see the information here that expired on Saturday, April 17, 2021. So this site here is encrypted. Okay, it's just secure using a certificate SSL, sorry, secure socket layer. Okay. You can also have HTTPS that creates a secure tunnel. If you take a look at this website and you take a look at the URL, it says HTTPS, which stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. It means that this guy is secure. Okay, and it just provides a secure tunnel. Whatever you put here, it is secure. A website that is taking customer credit cards should have a certificate and use HTTPS. Okay, and of course it uses TLS or TLS transport layer security or SSL for the bidirectional exchange of data coming and going. Okay. So AWS services support data in transit encryption. Okay, 2 examples: Amazon EC2, Amazon EFS. The data is transferred one place to the other. Remember that when we see EFS, we're going to see how to create an elastic file system. We're going to see how it works, and then all the data transfer from one side to the other is just data that is encrypted in transit. Okay. Also, when you just creating, you have a storage solution in your corporate data center, then you're sending that to an S3 bucket, then you're going to use the same thing. In this case, it's going to be SSL as well, because you have to use the internet, right? Here, you don't use the internet because it's just, it's inside the AWS backbone network, right? So you're not outside the cloud, but here you're outside the cloud because you are in a corporate data center, and then you're using storage gateway, which is for hybrid architectures, and then this solution extends the cloud to the corporate centers. Then you're going to use the internet. That's why you need to have SSL, which is secure socket layer, and that is simply using HTTPS and having a certificate. Okay. So securing Amazon S3 buckets and objects, and newly created S3 buckets and objects are private and protected by default. That's what I said before. Buckets are private and objects are private. Okay. So when use cases require sharing data objects to Amazon S3, it is essential to manage and control the data access, follow the permissions that follow the principle of least privileges, and consider using Amazon S3 encryption. So enable server-side encryption all the time. You want to have that data encrypted. Okay. You want to have that data encrypted. So tools and options for controlling access data, S3 data include Amazon S3 public access. It's very simple to use. By default, it blocks all the public access. Okay, so you have to unblock it if you want to make it public, or just keep it that way to keep it private. Okay, you can use IAM policies. It's a good option when the user can authenticate using IAM. Bucket policies is just a fine-grained document written in JSON that will allow access to the bucket policies, or simply deny the access. Access control list is just a list that gives access to specific resources. And it has just its legacy access control mechanism. The other things in place now that are more sophisticated than ACLs. And then use AWS Trusted Advisor, because this is a bucket permission check, a free feature that you can use to give you a recommendation of all the things that you need to use, okay, for recommendations. Okay. Module 4, AWS Cloud Security, working to ensure compliance. Okay. So this is more of the compliance section. Okay. So customers are are subject to many different security and compliance regulation and requirements. AWS engages with certifying bodies and independent auditors to provide customers with detailed information about the policies, processes, and controls that are established and operated by AWS. Guys, this is just information for you to understand that just like you have to be compliant as a customer, AWS has to be compliant with other organizations. Okay, AWS is also audited. They're inspect AWS to make sure that they are in compliance. Okay. So there are certification and attestations assessed by a third-party independent auditor. I'm going to read this, guys, because this is just information that you need to know. Example, ISO 27, guys. The laws, regulations, and privacies, AWS provides security features and legal agreements to support compliance. Example, the European Union General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, HIPAA. This is for information about people, especially patients at the hospital. Alignments and frameworks, industry or function-specific security compliance requirements, and centered the security internet, and European Union, United States provide a shield, privacy shield certified. So what pertains to AWS and what you need to know is that there's a service called Artifact. Okay, Artifact. And the Artifact is the one that contains the reports, the agreements, everything that AWS has been inspected for. Let's say some reports, right? Let's just read one here. Okay. Okay. So you can find it here probably. Let me see if I can choose Control F and say compliance. Okay. 30. We can see here that there's a lot of, attention compliance. See, this is the previous AWS PCI 3DS assessment package dated on June 8, 2020. The Coalfire system An external qualified security assessor company, Qualifier System Inc., has validated the AWS that AWS has successfully completed the PCI. This is for credit cards. Okay, Core Security Standard version 1.0 assessment, and were found to be compliant. Okay, so this is a report that shows the AWS. You can download the report here and take a look at this report. The AWS was inspected, and then it was found compliant with the things that they were inspected for. Okay, so you see, this is the artifact service. Don't forget that. If they ask you in the exam, what is a service where all the agreements and reports or PCI reports are? Just to say an example, PCI reports are, that's the artifact. Okay, artifact, that's the service. Okay, AWS artifact. AWS config, this is the one that evaluates every single change of configuration in your account. Okay, let's say that you want to enforce that port 22 is not open in any single security group. Okay, you can create a rule and just say, give me all the ports that are not compliant. All the 22 ports are open, right? And then it will scan your entire account and tell you which one are not compliant, okay? And it will tell you this security group has port 22 open. This security group has 22 open. This security group has port 22 open. And we tell you all the ones that are compliant and not compliant, okay? That's a good thing for every single configuration change in your account. AWS config is the guy, okay? So when you hear configuration changes in your exam, that is AWS config, okay? Very important. It will just continuously monitor your configurations, okay? It's continuously monitoring your configurations. And by the way, it's not free. You saw that I was charged for creating rules, but I forgot about it. I know they're not free, but I just forgot that I just created them, okay? I do a lot of things, that's why. So automatically, and I don't have time to check. So last night I made some time and just saw some reports from Cost Explorer, and it showed me that I was spending money on something that it was not intended to. Okay. Automatically evaluates recorded configurations versus desired configurations. Review configuration changes, view detailed configuration histories, and simplify compliance auditing and security analysis. Guys, this is the guy that tells you when there's configuration change, and it gives you a remediation. So if you take a look here at config again, config, right. It just gives me, you can add a rule here. I have some rules here, right? And it gives me some remediation. Here, I created this one last week. It will tell me all the restricted ports. In this case, a port 22, you see? Port 22, tell me the ones that are not compliant. And I don't know if it was in this class or another class. I just, because I'm teaching this class like 2 times at a time. I just reevaluated this, and it showed me all the ports that were not compliant, all the ports that had port 22 open, and then I deleted all these security groups or just removed that inbound rule, and then now I don't have any problem. I don't have anything. So if I do this, there's nothing, okay? But if I create a security group, let's just create it real quick here. One moment. Let me create a security group and let me open port 22. Okay. Just create a security group real quick. My port 22. Open security group. No problem. Now I'm going to add a rule. I'm going to open port 22. That's SSH, right? And then I'm gonna save the rule, save this rule. And of course I have to put a description here. I can put this prompt. And here I'm gonna say every single address. I have to put the source. That's very important. Okay, I created this rule. Then if I come back to AWS config, let me choose refresh this page, and then it will reevaluate that. Let's see what happens. Refresh. Parameters, block 22. Okay. Non-compliant, compliance. All of these are compliant. Okay. Okay. All of that are compliance. The ones that I had before, and what are ones that are compliant. It will show me later. It takes some time, but it shows me the compliance. Are these 4 that I had before, right? Because they don't have port 22 open. If I take a look at them, right? If I take a look at the other ones, they don't have port 22 open. Okay, this one, for example, it doesn't have port 22 open. So I will have to wait a little bit before I see any change here with this guy. Okay. Maybe later. I'll show you later when it just populates there. Okay. Okay, so Artifact is the one that has all the payment card industry certification reports. Like we said before, it's a resource for compliance related information, provides access to security and compliance reports, and select online agreements, can access example downloads, AWS ISO certifications, all the certifications, reports, agreements, all that you can find it in the Artifact from the AWS console. Okay, under security, identity, identify, and compliance, click Artifact. So I can come here to the service section, and then on the security, and there's identity, not identify. You can find Artifact here. Okay, and make it, Artifact. It says identify here is identity. Okay. Session key takeaways: AWS security compliance programs, provides information about the policies, processes, and controls that are established and operated by AWS. AWS config is used to access, audit, and evaluate the configurations of AWS resources. AWS Artifact provides access to security and compliance reports. The module wrap-up. In summary, in this module, you learn how to recognize the shared responsibility model, identify responsibility of the customer and AWS, recognize IAM users, groups, and roles, describe different types of security credentials in IAM, identify the steps to securing a new AWS account, explore IAM users and groups, and recognize how to secure AWS data, recognize AWS compliance programs. We're gonna do this too as well, the knowledge check. And guys, let's answer this question. Which of the following is AWS responsibility under the AWS shared responsibility model? Configuring third-party applications, maintaining physical hardware, securing application access data, and managing custom Amazon machine images.
See?
So we have, this is the keywords, right?
B.
Is AWS's responsibility. AWS doesn't secure the application access or data. That's the customer responsibility. So what is the answer?
Physical hardware.
B, yeah.
So the answer is B. Okay? They will maintain the physical hardware, not you. Right? Guys, these are some of the things that you can find here. Let's see. Maybe if I can, one moment. So maybe I can copy these guys. Paste them here. Yeah, they're clickable. That's good. Perfect. Okay, so you can have all these guys that you can read later. And thank you for participating. Okay. So you guys have any questions? Okay. So let's just take 5 to 10 minutes to do the knowledge check of this module. Okay. So let's go to your Academy, AWS Academy section in Canvas, right? And let's go to this one here, 1751. And let's look for the modules. And then here in module 4, let's do the knowledge check here. Okay? So I'm going to separate the class into teams. And then we're going to work on that for 10 minutes. Okay? This is not something long or anything. It's just a few questions here that you guys are going to do, right? Okay? So that's going to help you a lot. Okay? So I'm going to separate the class into teams, right? So that we can